Thinking on this light that's at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, here in Detroit is different studios. My compadre,
What up,
Tawana
though?
Honeycomb Petty. We finna go live in a second. We got our engineer, Brother Joe Black in the back. You know what I'm saying, putting it down for us.
We live
Tap
on the
in.
air.
The link is in the post before this post. Detroit is different podcast, a YouTube link. It'll be live. Check it out. We're going to talk about a continuation from the conversation we had with
Grassroots
myself.
organizing, y'all.
That's right. With Yusef last week, we began with the topic of studying struggle. And we're going to continue that conversation. Brother Yusef won't be with us today. He's doing the work of pushing the struggle.
He's at the National Black Radical Organizing Conference.
Yes, indeed. He represents us, and I'm confident that he's going to represent us well. So tap in. We over here at Detroit is different. Finna go live now.
As in, we've been live.
Oh, we've been live for a few minutes. All right. Greetings, everyone. Happy Saturday, June 24th, 2023. We still at it. Myself, Kwasi Akwamu, with my sister, Tawana Honeycomb Petty.
What up, though?
Y'all know she wasn't with us last week. Tell us about it. Tell us about it.
I ain't gonna even lie, y'all. I went on vacation in the Caribbean. I needed a break.
Well deserved.
Came offline, no digital anything, and I just enjoyed the water.
You tapped out.
I tapped out. I
All right.
needed it.
No, that's what's up. That's what's up. I think we all need a little reprieve, a little break, some space.
Yeah.
Mental, physical. You know, we need that. But again, welcome to the show. We happy to be here. Shout out to my brother Kari Fraser who put this thing together. And man, he been doing this thing for a very, very long time. I remember two stories, Joe. Did you know this? I believe I gave Kari a clipping, but when I was an editor over the Michigan Citizen, I had did a piece on Kari when he was in high school.
Wow.
For Detroit Public Schools.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a radio station before they sold it to corporate forces. I forget who was at the helm. I don't know if it was Burnley or one of these other people they superimposed on the city of Detroit when they took over the public schools, but they sold it to the corporate forces. Before then, those students had an opportunity to test their metal on the mic.
Yeah.
And
we used to write for the newspaper too.
Huh?
We wrote for the newspaper too. I wrote for the Free Press in high school.
See, right. It's a lot of things that young people not exposed to, but Kari been doing it ever since, and that's very remarkable. You know, young people change their minds on things, but Kari was an artist, and he is an artist, and he behind the scenes more than anything. Now he putting in the work, and I applaud that brother for this. Detroit is different because this platform has been beneficial to a lot of folks here in Detroit. A lot of voices being aired.
Alternative mainstream.
Yes, a lot of narratives.
Mainstream, right?
People's voice. Very grassroots. Serious. A little comedy.
Right.
You know, a lot of wittiness. But that's what it's about. You know what I'm saying? We got to balance the scales and try to bring all of ourselves to the table. So, what's the topic today? Studying struggle.
Ooh.
Studying struggle, man. The headlines, this struggle all over the world.
Man, Russia fighting Russia.
Yes, that's one of the things that really intrigued me. And I have a theory. This is not a conspiracy. It's a theory. It's a concept based on a lack of information, but based on the evidence that's before us.
Right.
And the Wagner Group.
Mm.
Is like what's that, Blackwater? What was the private military firm the United States? Is it Blackwater?
I believe so, yeah.
They use over there in Iraq and some of those Middle Eastern battles, United States contract. They get millions and millions of dollars to do the fighting on the battlefield. And, allegedly, usually the people that's part of these private military for hire firms. They, former military, special forces, Navy SEALs, these, highfalutin.
But wasn't the Wagner like the lumping of the Russians?
Well, no. What the Wagner Group did, clearly, I mean, you can't start a military thing without military experience. You can't excel at your trade and sell yourself without some degree of expertise. However, one of the things about the Wagner Group is Like currently, they saying that they got like 50,000 troops
Right.
in the field.
Right.
They've been in this battle with Ukraine since the very beginning in 2022.
Mhm.
50,000 is a lot of troops.
Mhm.
Uh, even as a private firm, how do you amass and vet all of these people? You can't.
Right.
They don't have the mechanisms to do that. I don't,
Well,
suppose
so from what I've studied and read, they've used incarcerated folks.
that is what they're doing.
They're
Absolutely.
using they're using what they're considering the expendable Russians that the
Yes.
Russian, government won't care if they die, essentially.
Yes. Yes. And that's exactly what they're doing. The Wagner group over in Russia
Mhm.
has recruited, and the state of Russia
Mhm.
has permitted prisoners
Yep.
to go into the ranks of the Wagner group and under the promise of freedom if they
Right.
survive this war.
Right. If they
Uh,
survive.
and so now this is my theory.
Which hundreds were killed the other day by.
Right. Hold on, let me get to my theory now.
Okay, go
I got
ahead
a
with your
theory
theory.
about
Go
this.
ahead with your theory. Look,
Now,
we wired
while
up
you in
about this. Look,
while you in war, right? While you in war,
listen,
and I had a
listen.
conversation with someone last night who had been in
Mhm.
one of these U.S. wars. I think either Persian Gulf or
Right.
Iraq, Afghanistan. One of these battles, United States keep the people distracted with.
Yeah.
However, and I was like, when you in battle, unless you got a family and they sending your check to your, take care of your people,
Right.
your money kind of just building up. You too busy fighting to be thinking about your chips. Your chips gonna be there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They feed you on the battlefield, whatever
Right.
that
Whatever
look
your
like.
day-to-day needs.
Yeah, whatever that look like. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? They take care of you. Sleep in the barracks or in the trenches, or
Mhm.
however that looks for that particular battle. However, I was sitting here thinking like, what if Putin them turned them guns on the Wagner troop just to instigate something so they don't have to pay them?
I mean, right. I mean, well,
I'm
they
like,
definitely turned it
because
on.
I'm like,
Turned
what?
on
I
'em.
mean, my man, I don't know how much they get paid, but I know it's in the mega millions.
Mhm.
And it also, this war has drug on, extremely long
Yeah.
for the kind of battle it has become. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they basically laying waste
Yeah.
to the
And the US has heavily funded Ukraine.
absolutely, absolutely. And they right now they also condemning Russia for the use of alleged use of drones from Iran, but primarily because they got sanctions
Right.
against Iran. I mean, but and on another note, I'm
Mhm.
really loving, and we don't have to agree with these other countries 100% to
Right.
understand. And I learned a long time ago, one of the most memorable quotes from Malcolm X is, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend."
Right.
And from that vantage point, I think about whoever the United States hate. I'm looking at them a little closer to find out what are their good qualities,
Yeah.
because they can't be as bad as the United States.
Plus, our narrative is so deceptive. I mean, I remember when I was in Cuba when Fidel Castro died,
Okay,
and the people were in the streets. Now, I'm not gonna say everybody loved Fidel.
right.
He's not above critique.
He's a human being.
But the way that the US was promoting what was happening in Cuba was the total opposite of what I was experiencing on the ground in Cuba.
Absolutely,
People were in the
always.
streets. There was 9 days of mourning. You
Mm.
know what I'm saying? They weren't selling alcohol. They had flowers in the street. They had memorials everywhere. And people were dancing in the streets in the US, especially in Miami. And a lot of folks were just like, the people in Cuba are finally free to celebrate his death. And that's not what was happening.
Wow.
And so that, to me, I mean, I had awakened to the US's mainstream media before that, but that was like a real time experience that really taught me like the differences
I
between
had
how we.
a similar experience of being somewhere when something monumental happened. I was in Lebanon when Trump was in office,
Mhm.
and I was there the day he cut off Palestine aid, all aid to Palestine.
Mm,
In turn for the refugee camp, what they use for all these, they got refugee camps everywhere,
right.
and the United States was a contributor, a major contributor to this, international fund that supports Palestine as they are under siege from U.S. sponsored Israel.
Right.
So I was there, and it was you know, kind of difficult because I was in sessions
Mhm.
where you had it was an international body. I was there for a Palestinian support
Right.
conference in the first place. You know,
Yeah.
international body. I met people from Bolivia, from
Yeah.
Pakistan. I got several comrades from Africa that I've met. You know, going on who was part of the delegation I was on
Yeah.
from Zimbabwe, including a member who was part of the Zimbabwe and liberation
Mm.
struggle in the battlefield. Uh,
I wish I would have traveled with
no,
that type of
it
delegation.
was very educational. It was very informative.
Yeah.
That was also that was in March 2018, and in
Mm.
March 2018 is when they launched that struggle,
Mhm.
going to the fence every Friday, and
Oh, right.
Israel was laying waste. And this was a
And that's when
spontaneous.
they really were bombing Gaza,
Yeah, they was destroying. They
Gaza
was
Strip.
bombing. These were men, women, and children, not
Mhm.
fighters, not
Right.
Palestinian fighters,
Right.
but they were just going to the fence and basically, you know, trying to draw attention.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to tear down the fence,
They would. I
anything like
mean, but they would have been, within their rights if they did.
right, absolutely. But Israel, of course, was very brutal
Yeah.
and murdering
Yeah.
and they did this for over a year, starting
Mhm.
in March. I was there in March 18 when this happened, and I'm not knowing that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it was very watching the international scene unfold in
Mhm.
my face was so I get what you
Yeah.
from, what I'm saying, your experience in Cuba.
Mhm.
So now we got over in Russia,
Yeah.
Putin,
Yeah.
you know, no, let's before we get back over there, we talking about Iran supplying these drones to
Mhm.
Russia allegedly, and now they're supposed to be actually building these Iranian
Yeah.
conceived drones in Russia,
Right.
which the United States is condemning while they're providing all these weapons of mass destruction to Ukraine, which are getting
Mm.
intercepted by
But we're giving
Russia.
billions to.
Yes, but now on another note,
Mhm.
they just had the Iranian president Rouhani just did a tour of Latin America,
Mm.
and he met with Cuba,
Mm.
Venezuela, and Nicaragua, and they had basically about trade relations. All these countries are under U.S. sanctions,
Right.
and they decided like, "Dig, how can we cooperate?" I mean,
Mhm.
we now the countries that's under the thumb of the United States, under the boot, should I say?
Yeah.
They refuse to. That's the only power of the sanctions is that so many people are indebted to the United States that
Right.
they refuse to
And they can
exercise
control
their
their
own
trade.
conscience
You know.
and say, well, they need medical aid or they need
Mhm.
certain food stuff or certain energy products or
Mhm.
because your humanity in you
Yeah.
says help people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It ain't the politicians at the top that you may disagree with here or there,
Right.
but it's the people at the bottom that suffer.
Right.
And so you try to, distinguish between the two. And but a lot of countries will not engage in trade with Cuba.
Right.
They villainize Cuba. They villainize Venezuela.
Right.
They villainize Nicaragua. And don't get me wrong,
Since the
some of the
60s, at least.
yes, and some of these countries do have, none of them are perfect. Some of them
Right.
are problematic. But I
And have
will
their
say
own types
this,
of dictatorships over their
and
people.
I
So
don't, and I don't even use that kind of language per
yeah.
se.
Mhm.
Uh, Struggling against imperialism
Mhm.
creates a dynamic because if you know anything about the way counterintelligence on the international level
Mhm.
operate, they got a bunch of international so-called non-governmental organizations
Right.
that go in and supposed to be organizing people around education or
Right.
around this or around that.
Yeah.
And a lot of these organizations are really looking for key people that they can pull in to
Mhm.
begin sparking what they call uh, movements among the masses, popular movements of resistance inside these countries. The
Mhm.
CIA goes in and pushes these elements, supports these elements,
Mhm.
and then they bring their media in and say the people are against Maduro.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? The people are against, Raul Castro or, however they want to
Right.
paint the story.
Mhm.
And we go for it because we see these people in the streets with these signs.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But we know there's always two sides of the story. It's the pro-Trumpers and it's the anti-Trumpers.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's pro-abortion, it's anti-abortion. It's always both sides there.
Yeah.
However, but none of these people, so organizing
Mhm.
against imperialism, it creates a very, very delicate walk
Right.
that some of these countries, they can become brutal because y'all are truly the opposition. Y'all the U.S. in this country.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And we got to deal with y'all because y'all dirty.
Yeah.
For real. And that is a part of the struggle. So they do look kind of vicious. So I don't want to get into like dictatorship, but you do
Right.
got to rule with an iron fist.
Yeah. I mean, so it's complicated because I try, just like here. I mean, I try my best to engage with folks that I know who are on the ground in different places, but then I'm also cognizant of the fact that they're not a monolith, like you're saying,
Right.
So um there are folks with strong revolutionary values in these different places that are in some regards disconnected from the everyday people, just like here sometimes. And so it's very complicated because, if I talk to, even if I use Cuba and Palestine, both of which are places that I've been to, and you talk to the people on the ground who are like trying to, I don't know, intervene in some of the harms that are happening from their governments. They're not always connected to the everyday person who's experiencing those systems. And that's a challenge with our struggle everywhere. That's a challenge, which is why our topic is so important, because
Yes.
the narrative is educating the public and not the study. And so that's been like a tremendous struggle for all of us, is that people are learning from their lived experience, which is important, but then you have to complement that with study. And
Study and struggle, theory
yeah,
and practice. They
yeah,
go hand in hand. You
yeah,
can't have theory without practice. You can't have practice without theory.
right.
Study and struggle is a real need. We do
Mhm.
need to emphasize. This is part two of a podcast we started with Yusef.
Mhm.
Studying struggle, not studying struggle, but studying struggle. And
Right.
what do we mean by studying struggle?
Right.
Uh, we have a history of struggle behind us.
Right.
We have a recent history, as just we just went to as far back as the George Floyd
Right.
uprising.
Yeah.
Of
That
you know what I'm
happened
saying,
all
during the
across
years
the
of the
globe.
pandemic, and
Yeah.
that's recent history, but it's history,
Right.
and it's worthy of closer examination, of study, of understanding what was happening, what went wrong, what was good.
Right.
You know,
Was it a movement or was it a moment?
right. I mean, all of
You
that.
know?
No, all of that, and
Yeah.
that's absolutely relevant.
Mhm.
But if we not thinking about these things, we just
Yeah.
reacting to them or
Yeah.
responding
Yeah.
to these things, then we won't get the deeper understanding that we need to press forward, to push the envelope,
Yeah.
for the needle to move, closer towards liberation.
Yeah.
And I say it all the time, and I'll
Mhm.
say it again. I'm gonna keep saying it because to me, in a nutshell,
Mhm.
until we end oppression,
Right.
oppression will never end.
Right.
The emphasis is on we.
Right.
The duty is on us now, because oppression does what? It oppresses.
Mhm.
Since we've been here, there's never been a day of peace.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe you had a vacation, you was able to pull away from everybody,
It's still
but
one
ultimately
piece. It's
somebody was
still
being
right.
hurt.
You're right.
Somebody was being afflicted
Right.
by this beast,
Right.
and we can't separate ourselves as individuals away from the group.
Nope, you're right.
Because some of us are doing better under
Mhm.
this oppression. Under, and let's get oppression is such an abstract word.
Right.
I think we should clarify settler colonialism.
Mhm.
Settler identifies the oppressor. It's a characteristic because we know that these people came here and conquered this land, brute force, and made it their home.
And I'll also tell you, Quasi, there wasn't a day while I was gone that I wasn't reminded that I'm a black woman
Man,
throughout my quote unquote vacation.
whew, man.
So I'm just gonna tell you, like, I was invisible to a lot of non-black people. Cut in front of me in lines, were very rude, dismissive of my humanity. And so even as I'm trying to have this, I hate to say self-care because I try not to look at it as self-care, because I know if I keep myself well, I'm going to be contributing to the struggle, right? And so I'm looking at it beyond just me getting some peace. But even in those moments, it was like I found half of my day reflecting on how I was being treated.
No, and it's hard, and you can't turn off what you deal
Mhm.
with every day for
Right.
the large part of your life.
Mhm.
You can't just turn off like I'm going to this next room and the problems over here don't exist.
Right. Right.
I'm away from it.
Yeah.
And and we read the stories of like Richard Wright, James Baldwin,
Mhm.
uh, what's his name, Josephine Baker, people that
Right.
left United States, moved to France. They was like, they accepted us. But there are also those same, same folks will tell you stories of some of the challenges, but
Yeah.
they just weren't the same challenges.
Right.
But they still exist.
Yeah.
These impressions of what many refer to as white supremacy, is which I like to say settler hegemony,
Mm-hmm.
because usually it's the settlers that are putting the most pressure on the international scene, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be Israel and their influence,
Mm-hmm.
United States and its influence.
Mm-hmm.
Britain got settlers all over the globe. They got a whole country called Australia,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? New Zealand and, Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, all these are settler colonies. These lands were occupied by human beings, by, we say so generally indigenous populations, but
Right.
even these indigenous populations, so many of them that you can't begin to enumerate by calling them all by their name. So you just
Right.
give them that blanket term indigenous.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And
But,
anti-blackness has infiltrated every single one of them.
oh man,
Even people who should be co-conspirators with us.
man.
So, that's just something I've learned. I experienced it in Palestine. I experienced it in Cuba. I experienced it in Jamaica. I experienced it in Mexico. There isn't a place
The
that
propaganda
I've
been
traveled.
hardcore.
Yeah.
Propaganda been hardcore,
Yeah.
and man, I mean, it's not
But
a
I understand, like you said,
yeah.
root cause. And so that doesn't make me say we shouldn't be in collaboration with these places to liberate. But I also understand Black liberation is what's going to liberate much of the people from the things that they've internalized as well.
All right, study and struggle.
Hmm.
You want to talk about some books? I brought a pile of books.
Let's go
Only,
through all your
only,
books.
and listen, I do it.
I love it.
For one thing, I want people to have some idea of what they can consider looking to. Then you can
Right.
take that and build on something else. When
Yeah.
I first started in my journey of studying, when I didn't know nothing,
Yeah.
I always went to the bibliography and looked up the books that they was reading
I say.
towards, writing the book they had. Like, Hakim Booty is one of the early authors I did a lot of read. He had all these books. I want to read everything here. So I
Right.
read Autobiography of Malcolm X. I wanted
Woo.
to read the
What
books he read
Yeah.
at night in his
Yeah.
cell
To
in prison
become
back
that
in the
person.
50s.
Yeah.
I was like, if it worked for him, what can it do for me?
That's right.
That was my mentality.
That's called systemic right there.
So I started there. So I figured, one of the books in my early development was American Negro Slave Revolts.
Mm.
What it point out to me is that he identified a little over 250
Wow.
different rebellions, and he wrote this book
Was
over,
counter
well
to the
over
dominant
well over
narrative.
50 years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of help you understand that, all right, we've been fighting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not new to me. This
Right.
instinct to
To
resist,
resist, yeah.
you know what I'm saying, being treated, less than human,
Mm-hmm.
being disregarded for your humanity. That's a natural
It's in your
thing that other
DNA.
people have responded to that, and you part of a history
Yeah.
that you don't have to feel that, they got me beat.
Mm.
They got bigger guns.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? They got me outnumbered.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thinking
Yeah.
defeats us before we get a chance to even, figure out a way. It might be a creative way that don't require you to even deal with none of that mess.
Right.
But you have to study the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Who did what, and what did they do, and how did they do it? Did they succeed? Did they fail? What was their strengths? What was their weaknesses? We had to explore. And what kind of set me on this path was this book, which I got a copy in the shed. Shameless plug, but I do this for y'all.
Where the shed at?
The shed is on the east side, 11530 Flanders over there by City Airport on the east side.
I say.
But this book, I read this many years ago. This is my personal copy, but I have a copy, and I try to find this book is long out of print. It was published in London. Basil Davidson is historian from London, but he's also he's written a ton of books about African history. And so that's a very but he was talking about, he kind of traces a lot of African liberation struggles. And in reading this, some of the myths that we get, we was talking about prior to the show, like
Mm-hmm.
Mansa Musa, what I'm saying, very glorified. He big in this Black excellence era of Black excellence, because he had the, he the most wealthiest person, what I'm saying, in the world. in in the dollars of
Mhm.
that day. Master didn't just show up with all this gold. This gold came from the earth.
Mhm.
How did he have all this gold to take on these these massive caravans while he was traveling to the Middle East, to Egypt, and across the
Mhm.
continent, engaging in trade, giving out lavish gifts everywhere he go? Where did he get all this stuff? Where did one
Right.
man just get all?
Right.
Where did Dan Gilbert get the money to help pay
Listen.
for the people to have attorneys to not get evicted while he's getting this money, so he can have houses and properties to evict people? He run a mortgage company, but he want to save people. It's a contradiction. But however, where did he get all this
Right.
money to be so charitable
Yeah.
from the people?
It make me
Mas-
think of a tweet somebody put out. Go ahead. Keep going.
So I was reading this passage in this book, The People's Cause: A History of Guerrillas in Africa. We talking about guerrilla fighters. He does a story on the end of the Songhai Empire, and how Morocco in the north in the late 1500s, they was plotting on West Africa, which had just gone through the Ghana, Mali, and Songhai was the last of the three great West African empires. And listen here, y'all. Empire, no matter how you say it, it's still an empire. And an empire is one people or nation that extends itself beyond itself and began to laying leadership and control or dominance over other peoples.
Mm.
Now that can be considered consolidating the peoples for a grand cause, as Shaka did in Southern Africa with the Zulus.
Mhm.
Trying to bring together, which benefited them as Southern Africa was being settled by the Dutch, by the British, and other European bodies. So it can be looked at, but now over there in the end of Songhai empires, Morocco was beginning to invade. And they had they said it was an English. He was a European at the head of this troop, this general over these Moroccan troops,
Mm.
and but they had a lot of Spanish and French slaves as conscripts in their army. Now they finna go take over West Africa. It's a Muslim country. Now it's a good bunch of dynamics in this little narrative. I'm just
Yeah.
giving it as a
And you can
capsule.
find that in this one,
Yes, yes, and
in
the
the
people's
People's
call.
Cause.
But now one of the things is it kind of notes
Mhm.
uh what led to the end. The Moroccans didn't win.
Mhm.
Songhai didn't win either.
Mhm.
Because what happened is the different ethnic groups in the Songhai began to fragment under the weight of the war
Mm.
against the Moroccans.
Mm.
And what happened is everybody began to step up on their own interests. Like, I'm tired of working for nothing.
Is that
All
what's
these different
happening in
groups,
Russia right now?
and they was pushing back against what we glorify. Well, like I said, we
Mhm.
talk about, like I say, Master, you using him as just an example because he came
Right.
a few hundred years previous.
Right.
However, the Songhai was the extending, the expansion
Yeah.
of the Mali Empire, which was under Mansa Musa,
Right.
and the Mali Empire was the expansion
Mhm.
of the Ghana Empire, which preceded it,
Mhm.
and it grows by leaps and bounds. These were Muslim empires, but not everyone in these empires were Muslim, and the people began to step up and resist.
Yeah, because they
And
was realizing that they were the source of those resources being
yes,
amassed.
and so and it never recovered, and colonialism began to exploit
Mhm.
those differences. And like I said, they weren't fighting against, but it led to the acceleration of the trade in slaves, because now you, like I say, the captives,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? Now the Europeans come in, they depopulating the continent with the captives, and all these able to easily pit people against one another, east side, west side, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? So on and
Right.
so forth, NAACP, and you know what I'm saying, Black Panther Party, the hypothetical random,
Right. Right.
whatever.
Right.
And so we go for the okey doke, but we
Which
don't
still
understand.
creates a hierarchy
Yes,
of
yes.
humans.
But we talking about Study and Struggle, another book. I took the cover off with us, but this is We Will Shoot Back by my brother Akinyele Umoja. Man, let me find it. We Will Shoot Back: Our Resistance in the Mississippi Freedom Movement, where he goes back and shows that even during the civil rights struggle,
Mhm.
there was in the South, you know what I'm saying, even preceding and after the Diggers for
Mhm.
Defense, which came out of Louisiana,
Right.
that there was a history of our people struggling. And we know this part of the struggle.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? We know that everybody just to say, you know what I'm saying, he won't turn me around
Right.
and we shall overcome
Yeah.
and take, you know, police boots and batons on our head.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, we might have the courage to step up in moments when our humanity on individual level or community level or the level of our workplace
Yeah.
or whatever, you know what I'm saying, may be impacted, and that we might step up and do what's necessary, have courage to, use our voice and our energy,
Mm-hmm.
because defeatism is a disease.
Yeah.
It's a disease,
Yeah.
and it spreads.
Mm-hmm.
It's contagious. One person scared somebody else.
Yeah. That's why we say in my comrades that Stop LAPD Spying Coalition talk about shifting from paranoia to power.
Paranoia to power. I love it. Talk about
Hmm.
that.
Yeah,
How does that work?
they're like, this internalized. I mean, fear, the type of fear that that we've internalized is an aspect of internalized oppression, especially within our movements, because it's saying it encourages you to be individualized. It encourages you to not make those sacrifices to create a safe community. And by safe, I'm not talking about public safety as in surveillance in the ways that we have started to internalize what safety means, or policing or any of that. But I mean, like, creating conditions where the people in your neighborhood can trust you and you can trust each other. And when there is a harmful element that enters your community, is dealt with in a number of ways. Some of those ways we don't want to talk about, but other ways is taking that person who has been so dehumanized and doing some work to humanize them. And so, like, when you move into a certain level of paranoia, you become the type of person that replicates these terroristic systems that are governing us. And you want the same type of harm to happen to your people that's already happening from these third party mechanisms. And so, shifting from paranoia to power means that you become vocal, you become active, you speak out on the systems that are dehumanizing us and brutalizing us and murdering us and incarcerating us and surveilling us. And
I
you
love it.
become powerful, because you recognize this legacy that Quasi has lifted of all the people that have come before you for generations, for centuries, who have stood up and struggled against those systems.
Hey, I love it. The shed.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't. It's a small space.
Hmm.
I can only have so much, so I had to curate it.
Right.
I had to curate. We sell art, books, and apparel.
Hmm.
The space not big enough to have everything.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Not even some of the popular bestsellers, because they may not fit the narrative
Right.
that I'm trying to counter, which
Hmm.
is the narrative of fear and inactivity.
Hmm.
Uh, I focus on the culture of struggle. I try to stock text that's inspiring in terms of the struggle, and also highlights the men and especially the women
Hmm.
that are engaged in our struggle. And I had noticed, so I observed something. Some of the women that I admire out of history,
Hmm.
Harriet Tubman is, special to me.
Ashe.
Harriet Tubman is special to me. Ida B. Wells is special to me.
Ashe.
Sasha Kaur, who's still with us in exile, it says political exile,
Hmm.
is special to me. Queen Mother Moore, is special to me. And, some of the things I observed about some of these women
Hmm.
is that they all carry straps.
Yeah.
They all carry the strap. And I didn't notice this at first.
Right.
I did not notice this at first.
Hmm.
But all my favorite women in history,
Hmm.
they strapped up. They were fighters. And so when people talk about, like, I mean to shift the narrative, shift the conversation away, but like, I remember when I was first hearing this protect the black woman thing,
Hmm.
and it just sounded like a blackface version. These white boys protect white women,
Hmm.
Southern gentility or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's foolishness. It's like, that's patriarchy.
I want to counter that though a little bit.
No, I mean, but let me finish my just point and then
Okay.
fully give me a
Okay.
full
Not to
counter.
say that there aren't elements of what you're saying
No,
though.
I'm with not.
Yeah.
My argument was, well, who gonna protect the black man,
Hmm.
because he ain't particularly safe himself.
That's true.
He ain't secure himself. And
That's
when
true.
most of these mass protests around black men being slain, we know about the Breonna Taylor,
Yeah.
Ayanna Stanley Jones,
Right.
uh,
Some of
uh,
Sandra Bland.
right. I mean, we can go on and on with the women too.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Renita McBride.
Yeah. Renisha. Yeah.
So, but we're all, the point
And the
is that
tens
we're
of thousands of
all
missing black
dominated.
women.
We're
Yeah.
all vulnerable.
Right.
And that none of us are safe, meaning we all have to protect each other. We all have to be vigilant.
That's true.
We all have to tighten up. We got to stop acting, taking on these ways of these settlers
Mhm.
as if somehow our women are genteel.
Not,
The women,
not that they
Ida B. Wells was
genteel.
fighting. She been her crusade against lynching.
Right.
Because some brothers were lynched.
Right.
The same thing that led to the people critique the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
One of the arguments is that it's led by lesbian women.
Mhm.
These lesbian women stood up for a black boy,
Yeah.
a black man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we cannot dismiss
Mhm.
that, it's a role and an importance of women that get kind of pushed to the side when we say women need protection.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, we all need protection. We should be protecting our women
Yeah.
and our children,
Right.
and our children and women should be prepared to protect and be vigilant of their surroundings, that they're not easy victims to this voracious system
Yeah.
that we're up against, that we like to, sometimes think that today is a good day, and pressure not part of my existence. And
You
can't
will
go to
be
sleep.
reminded.
Can't go to sleep. Can't go to
Yeah.
sleep. Try to enjoy a little laughter, a few jokes, and
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, dance, and get it in or whatever.
Yeah.
But we cannot fall asleep at the wheel,
Mhm.
and we got to stay focused and at all times, because until we're in oppression will never end. But give me your counter now. What do you say?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. There are some elements of that debate. As with anything that becomes a mass statement, it gets diluted, right? And I think, at least from what I recall, the origins of that statement was an appeal to black men, particularly from black women, regarding like certain types of harms that were intracommunal. And of course, it got watered down to being like, oh, woe is me, get in front of things and like keep me safe. But that's not really the way that I experienced that when it first began to be a call to action. And so it makes me want to read from a little bit from the book that I brought.
Okay, break it.
Charlene Carruthers. She's a profound activist organizer out of Chicago, a dear friend and comrade. And so she wrote this book called Unapologetic, a Black, Queer, and Feminist Mandate for Radical Movements. And I just want to read a little bit of what she wrote in here. And she said, I'm never more targeted by hatred from within the Black movement community than I am when our work is highly visible. I've been called out for being a dangerous lesbian and someone parents should keep away from their children. Feminism and queer politics and the people who engage in them are often slandered and called divisive. This is nothing new. Barbara Smith's Toward a Black Feminist Criticism essay, written in 1977, aired a deep and righteous frustration about the invisibility of Black feminist writers in all areas of culture and society. She understood the publishing of this essay as dangerous but necessary in a time when a movement advancing Black feminism was desperately needing. Writing as Black women, lesbians, and feminists means contending with violence that no one should ever have to deal with. And so she basically just talking about how we have our unified struggle, right? Like we're under attack from all powers that be globally,
women are,
right?
Our sisters are more oppressed.
Yeah. And so, it's just so when it was like protect Black women, the way that I experienced it was, and maybe that was from my perspective as a Black mother of a Black son and a Black woman who loves Black men and have only ever dated and been in relationship with Black men with the exception of like one mixed Black man who was mixed with Thai. But I have not for the most part, with the exception of just a couple of those relationships, felt safe amongst my own. And so, like, when I would unify in some of those statements or movements, it would be an appeal to, like, brothers, come on, like, we need your protection. And feeling as though we were always in defense of the black man, and up down for whatever. And I don't want to make it like a
No, I'm growing.
monolith,
Actually,
like
I'm growing from
everybody.
what you sharing is elevating my perspective on this. So
Hmm.
continue. I'm with it, and I'll share
Yeah.
my elevation.
But I definitely agree with you. As with anything, just like Black Lives Matter, it has been watered down. I mean, I saw it in real time get watered down to make us like these docile, non-contributory black women who just want to be catered to. And there is an element of our population that has fed into the, internalized patriarchy, and white supremacist way of thinking, where it's like, if he ain't got, this and that, then I don't want it. If he can't, and so that element does need to be addressed. But the element, when I think about protect black women, I think about what Charlene was talking about, with regard to how we experience our relationships and the movement.
Right.
Um,
That quote you read, that was the essay that led to the founding of the Cohambie River Collective, correct?
yes. Mhm.
Which is a black feminist collective. I had some of their books.
Yeah.
So I had some books, some of their writings from the Cohambie River Collective.
Hmm.
And see, one of the things when you say protect black women, and we also have this recurring idea within among our people who don't study the struggle that push back to say against feminism. It seems
Hmm.
as if it's like a foreign thing imposed on us and we just jumping on it like people do when they say Marxism. And we
Right.
had this aversion. And what we, like I say, I'm going back to that Malcolm quote
Come
again:
on.
the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
United States government has an aversion
Hmm.
to feminism.
Hmm.
Black men had the right to vote in the settler society before white women did.
Right.
I mean, women are present. So I mean, we had this entrenched
And we got to
idea of
recognize when we
patriarchy.
become tools of that same.
So we
Yeah.
take these ideas, and as respectability politics
Hmm.
evolved across the generations.
Yeah.
You know, part of our struggle in trying to be recognized as full human beings,
Yeah.
believing that the possibility was here inside this degraded settler state, is that we thought that if we behaved a certain way, we got the education and we stood up right, we took care of family, and
Hmm.
we modeled ourselves
Yeah.
after this stereotypical notion that was put out as propaganda, but which Europeans, these
Right.
settlers themselves,
Right.
don't acknowledge. I mean, all these right-wing people that's in Congress and that's been pushing family values and anti-abortion, take care of the baby, and it's like y'all cutting the ability for people to take care of these babies. Y'all,
Right.
y'all
Right.
want these babies, it's under rape or any circumstance, just have these babies. But
And
however,
then as soon as
half
they
of them out there
born,
messing around with little boys and
right.
I remember a couple of Congress people. One of them may have been a senator. They had these little like interns pages
Mm.
that works in DC.
Yeah.
And one of them, he was messing around with all these little boys running around, supposed to run messages from one congressional office to the other and all this. And it's like he's the
Using
same,
his power.
and the same ones pushing this
Hmm.
family value stuff down our
Right.
throats
Right.
while they doing this other mess.
And then when the children are born
They're
that they
hypocrites.
force you to have, they don't want you to get any resources or support.
Oh,
You're
man.
saying, I can't afford to have this child for whatever reason, psychological,
I couldn't.
some
My
trauma,
boyfriend
or
couldn't
you
afford a
just right,
condom.
right. And
So
then when you have the child, it's like, oh, now they just want a handout. So I mean, they want more, but it makes me think about when we were
hypocrisy.
enslaved, right? It makes me think about that. It's like they didn't care about the whole human that was born. They just needed another person to be
They
contributing to
bred us.
production, and to be commodified and to be filled in, system of incarceration, because that's free labor. So they know that the chances of success for a child that doesn't have wraparound services, that's in extreme poverty, that isn't, doesn't have a village or particular resources, the chances of them being able to contribute in a meaningful way has been slashed in half. So it means that they're going to be fed into a system that's going to create more and more free labor for this government. So that's what it boils down to. It's nothing to do
Yeah.
with, family values, like why you would force someone to have a child that they don't want to have.
Right. So we have to
And
understand.
then I'm sorry, real
Go ahead.
quick. And they're afraid of the extinction of the white race. That's something that people don't talk
It's a
about.
very
So it's like it's really white women that they want to not have abortions.
yes, because their birth rate is a little slower
Hmm.
than some
And the
of our
population is becoming more and more mixed.
uh around the world.
Right.
Around the world.
Mhm.
So yes, you know what I'm saying. So pushing back against these comments, you know what I'm saying, like I say, this feminism, and
Yeah.
feminism is just women being able to, be assert themselves with their full rights as equal to
Mhm.
men, as equal as our biology
Mhm.
allows. You know what I'm saying. But I know some women who harder with the power tools than some men. You know what I'm saying?
Right. But
Who-
men can be feminists too, though. That's the
I know.
thing. That's the misinterpretation of what feminism is. Feminism, it really is. It's taking a softer, more holistic, humane approach to how we engage with one another, seeing each other as fully human, as our whole selves, as needing to have breaks and take self care, as needing to be in a village mentality. Because if we don't have a feminist lens, then we're looking at everything as brute and force and trauma, and that is not the way that if we want a whole society, that's not the way that we're going to be able to make that.
No, I absolutely agree. I interviewed Bell Hooks at the Apple Book Center many years ago. Many years
Wow.
ago,
Wow.
and I was an admirer
Hmm.
from my days of incarceration of Bell Hooks. So she wrote pretty hard,
Yeah.
and I was still evolving in my perspectives and my understanding.
Hmm.
But I remember telling her, I said, I'm a feminist too, and she said we need more men feminists, and of course. I'm not all the way, I wasn't all the
Right.
way there. This is
Right.
15, maybe, close to 20 years
That's
ago.
amazing, though.
But I was in awe of her,
Hmm.
and I just like the power. She was a thinker, and
Yeah.
I'm a thinker. I
Hmm.
like deep thinking. Because I like to understand. I
Yeah.
don't think there's a single problem we can't solve
Yeah.
if we but have understanding of that problem.
Right.
It's a solution.
Yeah.
It's like math. You just got to figure out what's the formula to
Hmm.
this particular problem.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And but we had to be like math. We had to be precise. Ain't no wrong answers.
Right.
Math it's either right or it's wrong. Ain't no almost there. I almost got it.
And they evolve math whenever they want to. So
So
it's like,
right, and that's what the scientific thinking
hmm,
is about. That's what dialectical materialism is about. It's about us helping to look at, what I'm saying, struggle, look at the civil rights struggle and recognize that that has this dual nature to it. It has
right.
a reactionary aspect, then it has a revolutionary aspect.
And so now we're at the point we got to push for dialectical humanism, which is asking us to see the whole self, right,
Oh
in
wow,
ways that the
I love it.
movement prevents us from doing sometimes.
And
So,
yes, I'm listen. That is that phrase itself is a mouthful.
and I learned that when in Grace's final days, you
Yeah,
know.
because we and transformation is a process.
Yeah,
There is no overnight change.
right. I
There's no
hope I don't
overnight
stay
change.
stagnant. I hope I keep.
And but as all living things either grow or decay.
Right,
You know what I'm saying? There's no standing still.
right.
My sister Sherry,
Hmm.
she was like, "Well, you also got dormancy.
Right. Yeah.
Dormancy is, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? In this thing, struggle things is we either get beat down or you know what I'm saying, we making headway towards a better day.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? There's no dormancy here.
Right.
And I think, so we have to be mindful that, either we eating healthy or we eating bad.
Right.
Ain't no middle road. You know what I'm saying? I'm not eating.
Hmm. And this one
That's
thing,
unhealthy
look,
too.
this one thing I like to tell people, especially when I talk to vegans, right? And they're like, well, you're inhumane if you're eating like meat. And I'm saying, like, have you thanked the plant, the living plant that's
Because
feeding
they don't
you?
talk or bark or
Right,
bite.
exactly. It's like that's also a living being. That's a living mechanism, organism that
Yeah,
can
for real.
feel in the same ways that an animal can. And so if you with anything, if you consume a thing and you have no respect for that thing that has nourished you and fed you, it doesn't make you a better human than the person who
That's
just
correct.
went and ate a hot dog. You know what I'm saying? So It's like it really and I'm saying, like, I'm not saying go eat a bunch of hot dogs because that's not healthy. But what I'm saying is when you feed your body with anything, whether it's literature or food, you have to have a relationship with that thing that has nourished you, that is respectful, that honors that contribution that that thing is making to you, whether it's a tree or an animal or a book.
And that's why a lot of people in their struggles kind of fall back into some of these indigenous cultures and
Hmm.
practices because we're in this modern society so far removed
Yeah.
from nature.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We have become, hence our dependence on technology
Yeah.
for everything. Like I say, restoring neighbor back to the hood is one
Hmm.
way to keep the neighborhood safe. Let's get to know each other. Let's be
Right.
neighborly to one another.
Listen.
Let's have each other's best interests at heart.
That's right.
Let's stop being strangers to one another, alienated from one another, from
Hmm.
ourselves even.
Hmm.
So restoring the neighbor back to the hood, we
Yeah.
create a neighborhood. And not just
Exactly.
hoods. When you separate neighbor from hood, all you got is hood
That's right.
because you don't no longer have neighbors.
And
And
what
that's a
hoods create?
solution.
Fear,
You don't need
paranoia.
police when I know my people across the street, I know my people next door, I know my people behind me.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? We have a community, we look out for each other.
Yeah.
We care about each other's best interests, their human interests.
Yeah.
That matter.
I thought
That
I
matter.
locked my
Good faith.
door. I thought I locked my door the other day. My apartment door was wide open. Didn't even know it. Left. I left. My neighbor, who I've only seen twice because they just moved there, she did something to rig to keep my door closed
From swinging
until I
open.
got home. And then she said, I noticed that your door was open. I just put something, you know what I'm saying? She could have, if there wasn't just in those two engagements that we had, I hadn't seen her as human and said, "How you doing? I'm Tawana. I live da 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 da." She said hi, her name, she lives such and such. If I hadn't seen her as human and engaged her, I mean, she's probably a good person and would have done it anyway. But that's the difference. We don't just walk past each other. Even if you live in an apartment and you renting, which you can still be a contributory human being and build a community
That's
in an
right.
apartment building. You know what I'm saying? And so,
We
like,
all we
my
got.
neighbor did not wasn't a predator on a situation that she could have been. She made sure that my place was protected until I got home. And that's those
And
things
how do you
can happen
create predators?
anywhere.
Predators don't care about people who
Right.
don't care about them,
Right.
first and foremost. I mean, so we live in an environment where people had this orientation as every man or woman for themselves.
Mhm.
And in that context, people feel justified in victimizing
Yeah.
whomever leave
Right.
themselves open to being victimized.
That's true.
And
But sometimes predators just feel invisible. I'm not justifying
that's
it.
what I'm saying. They just like I'm on my own.
They
I don't
don't
care
care, so
about
why should
nobody.
I care?
So and the thing is, but you can, you
Mhm.
know, predators also operate out of places of desperation. A lot of
Right.
cases. I
Mhm.
mean, ain't no one. I ain't
Right,
paint no
right.
one
Yeah, there
way
are
for
some people
anything
that are born
or the
into
way
the
things
world
happen.
evil, but
But we do know that people
that's not
sometimes
most
are
people.
living. And I think about like over on the east side near me. It's we have 3 or 4 different regular people that I know have like mental health
Mhm.
issues. That's like be on grass shit, to be at store,
Yeah.
gas station, bus
Yeah.
stop, and they just for the most part I've been there for years.
Mhm.
But I remember some years ago, a guy, his name was Willie Welch. These other ones I just don't happen to know their
Right.
name.
Right.
Was a guy named Willie Welch. He was a homeless man. He got killed. It's a dispensary now on the corner
Mhm.
of French Road and Gratiot,
Mhm.
King of Buds.
Mhm.
That family used to own that liquor store, GM Liquor Store, which moved closer. GM Liquor Store is right there on Connors,
Mhm.
over there by the CVS. And of course, I've never been in there, and I haven't been in there. They killed Willie Welch
Mm.
many years ago, over a decade ago. Willie Welch had went in the store. Allegedly, he stole a beer. And on his way out the store, a guy just shot him in his back. He didn't say, "Drop my beer, give me my money." But he clearly knew that Willie Welch
Was
had
unhoused,
been in
didn't
this
have
neighborhood for
right.
years,
Right.
homeless,
Right.
going through it, but for the most part, harmless.
Mhm.
I don't know if he stole a beer or that was just a rationale.
But it definitely wasn't a death
But he got shot
sentence
in the
for
back,
$3.
and we shut that store down,
Mhm.
and they opened up somewhere else at a later date.
Mhm.
But it was tragic. But we don't have a sense of community. We can pull people in, even including predators.
Right.
It's an act of good faith. One of the things I talked about in my book that I wrote years ago is create like a neighborhood Rolodex, a skills index of like,
Mhm.
what do your neighbors do? Somebody build websites,
Right.
somebody do roofing, somebody do plumbing,
plumbing.
somebody
Right.
might be out of work
Right.
and you need
You
something
need something
done
that you
that
can't
match
even
their
afford to.
skills.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's an act of good faith
Yeah.
to get them and not be afraid of them.
Right.
Because I don't want them to see I
What
got
I
that
got.
new flat screen. I got that
Right.
new technology.
Mhm.
And I don't want them to see what I got because then they're gonna come for it. No,
Mhm.
you already showed them some love by by putting them to work
Right.
when they
Exactly.
needed you.
You showed them that you saw them as a human being.
But you also got to have a relationship first.
That's true.
You got to get to know your people.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? That's how you build community. And you know, that's the seed for mutual aid and
Yeah.
all these things because you never know when you need help. You might be
Listen, been
have a
there.
flat, need somebody to change your tire.
Yeah.
Spill
Listen,
some sugar,
I'll tell
mama.
you a story real quick, Quasi. We was at
Go ahead.
went to what's that called? It's a gosh, I forget the name of the place, but they got a lot of little different restaurants in it and they made it out of a storage container. It's
Oh, you
in-
talking about American Shipping Company?
yeah, the shipping company. So I took my cousin there because we couldn't figure out what we wanted to eat. I said, well, it's a bunch of places in there. We'll go in there. So she doesn't live in the city. And we went with her, and there were some unhoused gentlemen outside, and so she grabbed her strap because she like, I don't know what's going on. And I said, put it away, it's good, it's all good. So one of them came up to the car, and I said, I said, back away from her car, but I gave him a 5. And so he went on about his business, and then another one came up, and I said, oh, I only had one $5 bill on me.
It's rough sometimes.
But this is the funny part in which she said it really shifted her perspective. Um, he said, "Oh, honeycomb, you normally give me the 5. How you gonna give him the 5?" And so she was just like, "Oh, they out here knowing your name, and you know what I'm saying, and like they just knew to come to you." And I said, "Yeah, but it's not an extractive situation. It's like I know that when you park your car here." And we go in that place, when you come back out, your car gonna still be here. Ain't nobody gonna mess with you because they know that I saw them as human. You know what I'm saying? We built a relationship. So it's not just about the 5. It's
Right.
about I've had
Humanity.
conversations with them. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't always have a 5, but I always have a conversation. So
And that matter. No,
yeah.
that's huge. That matters. And
Hmm.
it can be challenging out times. Some people can be, scary. Like I say, it's a lot of mental health issues out
Right.
here.
Yeah.
And I don't care how you look at it. That's oppression.
Right.
That is oppression manifesting in some people differently.
Yeah.
And
And I'm not saying
and some
walk
of
up
us
to every
can't have.
person,
Some
right.
of us, take pressure differently, and we
Right.
have to be mindful of that. And we have to be patient
Hmm.
with one another because we don't know everyone's particular struggle,
Right.
and we all have struggles.
Yeah.
And so we have to, as part of liberation is, kind of getting back to our own humanity. One of the things that was robbed of us.
Yeah.
We talk about our religion and our language and our culture and our families, but we lost our humanity.
Yeah.
They stumped it out of us.
Hmm.
Their intention was to
Stumped and
make
continuing
beasts of
to.
us.
Yeah.
And some of us, we glorified in being beasts,
Hmm.
and so we really do have to restore our humanity.
Yeah.
And we have to know how to treat one another. We have to be patient.
Hmm.
Every situation ain't equal. Some people gonna push your buttons,
That's right.
and
Yeah.
but we have to start out with the best intentions and recognize that we need each and every one of us, and all of us are valuable, no matter where we at, no matter what level of contribution we can make. But we need all of us in this.
Ashe. And thank y'all for tuning in. We see you, Motown OM and Ben Frank. Peace and blessings to both of you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right. So we're gonna wrap this up. I appreciate having this conversation with my sister again. Like I said, my brother Yusel, he put in major work down there.
Yeah.
Part of the community movement builders. So we're gonna wrap this up. See y'all again. We here the 2nd and 4th Saturday of the month. Detroit is Different Studios. Thank you, Joe Black.
Yes.
doing a
Engineer
fantastic job.
extraordinaire.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. One half of Black Cloud. I hope you take us out with the music now. I done got used to that
That
vibe.
Confused. I sing the blues, why life
Tap in, share, subscribe, like, do all that good stuff. You know, help us spread the message, internalize the message. Come to the shed, we open.
All right.
1:30 today. Peace.